2x2 formation. Road change now, we go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action, it's go.
This is very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in, this has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one on through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that from the inside line. Yes,
Oh, we did.
Through he goes.
Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along to round 5 of the Apex Online Racing GT3 series. We are up for 90 minutes of racing here at the Hungaroring. It's going to be 90 minutes of challenging racing, open pit strategies, I believe, this evening. And I am joined in the booth, as always, by John. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Tim. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. It's a bright old evening here in front of the screens. Hopefully my eyes will survive the entire night. So I do apologise for bailing out on a few of them over the last couple of weeks due to some eye problems. But all back, fresh PC, fresh eyes, so we should be on for a good one. How have you been keeping, John?
Yeah, I've been keeping good, and talking about everything being fresh, it looks like we're heading into a fresh qualifying session for these guys to get into. And you know, looking back at Donington, obviously a couple of weeks ago now, but it was an incredibly interesting sort of race with how everything panned out with that. And you know, for the first time all season, we saw the cracks in the armors of Karekas. He made mistakes and really lost quite a chunk of his lead potential, having finished previously on the podium every single race. So you know, he'll be looking to try to get a better, more consistent performance, more what we're expecting of his sort of caliber. And I think another driver's going to be a bit on a mission to recover some lost ground is Connor Wright in that Van Wall BMW. He was effectively in the second half of the race, after jumping Mark Toll, was in the hot seat for quite the victory, and then it just all fell apart in the latter portion of the race after he got a drive-through penalty, as so many other drivers did suffer with the rather harsh and difficult track limits at Donington. So we were left with quite the interesting and exciting race that we had at Donington. I think that Hungaroring could be another interesting one. Track limits again are going to be a bit on the tricky side. Weather-wise, I think we've got a pretty consistent dry running for the entire race, but I think it's going to definitely be one to watch. And pit strategy, I think there's a few more options for these guys this week as well. So it's going to make some good racing.
Yeah, like you said, obviously the pit strategy is going to be... Oh, I feel a bit of contact there. Just on board with Makovkin at the moment. I think he was one of the first guys out, so he should be one of the first guys to set flyer. Possibly a couple of cars in front of him, but we'll stick with him for a moment. Yeah, like you said, the pit strategy is going to be a big one this evening. I presume everyone is probably still just going to go for a single stop. But I think there is some variance in the weather. So currently at the moment there's no wind in any direction, so it shouldn't really make any difference for them. But you never know. You never know if there's a bit of a spanner thrown in at some point over the space of 90 minutes. Will the weather change? I think it was about 60% weather randomness, so possibly difference, which might mess with some people's pit stops. And like you said, also 90 minutes is a long old time to pick up any kind of penalties around here. We're just coming up to this corner now. Very aggressive inside curb there. Let's actually change the camera slightly so we can see a bit better. But quite a varied track this, isn't it? Lots of flying corners where you've got to really get on the power and get your exit right. At the same time, there's quite a few really tight little chicanes, as we're seeing here. And again, very easy to overcut those and possibly make mistakes. But it's going to be a good one, I think. A little bit limited on the grid, obviously, with everything going on in the world at the moment. Some people unable to race. Obviously, real life does come before racing, and it's obviously, there's, you know, especially across most of Europe, it is all a little bit uncertain at the moment. So, great effort to see the guys that have shown out, but it is going to be a little bit thinner on the grid. But possibly a great chance for some of the other guys to, you know, get some points back. Caracas, like you said, is possibly his bad luck from Season 8 returning here for Season 9. He hasn't put in a lap yet, but he will be looking to get some points. And we do have his main rival. I'm sure I saw him in here somewhere. Reyes is around somewhere. Oh, here we go. That's the first lap come in. Connor Wright put in the first flyer with a 1:43.3. A couple of more coming in now. Can you see? Yes, yeah, down the bottom. He's in 19th at the moment. I had a panic then. I thought our second place man was
just
not
across
here.
the line now, and goes up into P2, so second in the championship, and after those first set of laps, sitting in second in the qualifying order. I think another driver to keep an eye on. I don't know if he's set a lap yet. I think he may have kind of backed off the last one. Is Mark Toll. Now, Mark Toll at Donington, and in similar fashion to what he had at the Nürburgring, he led from the start, he got a big gap, and then it just all fell apart in the pit stop, and he didn't. We thought that maybe there was an error in the pit stop, maybe he overshot his box, just lost some time amongst the pit stops and pitting a little bit later, lost out from the undercut. And although he did showcase a decent amount of pace in that second stint, he just did not have the pace of the other drivers around him in the second half of that race. Connor, Tommy, all of those drivers were just able to consistently be that bit quicker. And it was a bit of a surprise, considering the sort of way that we'd seen him just completely take off and dominate at the second round of this season at the Nürburgring. So I think, you know, the Porsche, I think Luke managed to put it in the P2 spot for qualifying yesterday. So I think the Porsche's got some decent pace in it if you can extract it, but it can, as always, be quite a tricky car to hook up, and there's some really high commitment corners around here, particularly thinking of the likes of turn 4. It's a blind apex, so you're carrying a lot of speed over the crest, and you need a car that's going to be able to stick with you through the corner, but it's also quite accommodating to that inside curb, so that you can carry that momentum through consistently and not be in too much of a vulnerable position to get a track limit warning on the exit. So all of those combinations of factors, and I think also the curves of that turn 6-7 chicane, that also makes it just such a tricky track to put together. But Mark Toll currently sitting with Caracas down at the very tail end of the order, so I expect to see those two moving around soon. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where they move around up to.
11th place, Caracas. I just was on board with him, and he's just put his first flying lap in, down in 11th place at the moment, so well off the pace. Someone who's just put in a great one is Marlon Andrade.
That's a massive lap time.
1:42.7. That's a good one. And he went straight into the pits and back out, so he obviously thinks he can go faster again. Trying to see who is on a flyer at the moment. Zhang Gang is currently on a flyer. He is 0.2 up. This is a guy in one of the Porsches. Absolutely hammering it. Oh yeah, big old slide there.
Through those sequence of corners. Don't be doing that too often. But
he is still up on his time though. Still currently up even after that big slide. So it'll be interesting to see if he stays up. He's got a bit of traffic coming up in front of him, but it looks like it's moving out the way.
think this final sector is where the Porsche is also particularly strong. It's a very stop-starty sector, and unfortunately Yang Kang ends up pulling to the side of the road there and doesn't end up completing that. But that final sector, I think, is where the Porsche is really quite strong in this track, because it's quite narrow changes of direction and making use of that great acceleration that the Porsche has, and it's such good amount of traction. The drive it can get out some of those corners and how early it can be on the power is a really big advantage. But there are other corners, as we saw kind of as we were making his way through turns 9 and 10. They're these weird corners where typically you want to kind of coast through the apex, and lifting off the throttle in the Porsche, that's what starts to unsettle this car and get the back end of that car to be a bit tricky to maintain. So we're going to see if he's able to tame that any better. Another Porsche that has made his way up the order a bit is Polikov, who's currently sitting in P5. So that's a pretty good effort there from him for the time being. But that 42 from Marlon, I really think is going to be a very difficult one to beat. And I think that the Ferrari is not a car that we see too much. We didn't really. I don't think there's. I think only 2 or 3 drivers in Tier 1 that are using the Ferrari. So it's difficult sometimes to place the respective pace of these cars. But the Ferrari is one that's typically always been quite good at the Hungaroring, just naturally because it's mid-engine, decent downforce package. It's able to carry a lot of speed through all of these corners, and it's just able to be a quite consistent car around here. And Marlon, who has shown fantastic pace at times, put himself on pole position, I think, a one race, but then a penalty carried over from the previous, and then a contact with Masum, if I remember correctly, ended up kind of ending that potential. But he's constantly been up there and pushing the very fastest guys on the grid. So right now he's looking to kind of continue that momentum and maybe for the first time get a representative result, the sort of pace that we're used to kind of seeing from that Ferrari as of late.
Yeah, I mean, he's seen the podium once. That was round 3. He saw the podium. So that was Nürburgring, wasn't it? Round 3, I believe. So that was a decent finish for him there. Was that Nürburgring?
That was Donington Park was last week. What other British track did we go to? Brands Hatch. So
it was Brands Hatch. Yes, it was. Yeah. It's all become a blur. we did have 2 British tracks on the trot, so it does sometimes make it a little bit difficult to place which one was what. I'm just having a quick look again at that time actually by Marlon, and yeah, he's 0.3 faster than the next guy. That's a big jump. Whereas you look at everyone else, they're all sort of 100th of a second between each other. That's a big old jump. In fact, it's nearly 0.4, isn't it? It's the best part of half a second quicker. Connor Wright.
But just very quickly, sorry to cut you off, another big jump we might just about see made is Korekes, who went up 0.6 of a second improvement on that lap. So that's more than what we would expect. And he sits just outside the top 5 at the moment. So maybe not quite as high up as he would like, but that's a bit more in line with the sort of performance that we would be expecting from him. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Marlon, a terrific effort. And if my deltas,
he might be about to go a lot quicker again, mightn't he?
But he does seem to be very, very fast at the moment. We might see even sort of dipping towards the mid-42s, which, I mean, Connor looks like he's on a pretty decent lap as well. He's a bit further up the track.
Mark Toll out of nowhere put himself in 2nd place.
Don't know if it's going to be 2nd for very long. I think Connor, if he keeps this momentum up to the line, I think he might look to topple that time and go back up into P2. I don't think it's going to be good enough to take Marlon. As he comes across the line, yes, and he gets a 49.927. So the first driver to even dip into the 42 since Marlon put in that absolutely stellar lap, and with only just over 3 minutes of qualifying left, that time from Marlon is looking incredibly fast. And you look at the sectors, I think Marlon may have made not necessarily a mistake, but kind of didn't have, in comparison to kind of the best of first sectors, he lost a few tenths in Sector 1, but his middle and final sectors were 4/10 of a second faster each than Conor Wright's last effort. So he loses 3/10 in the first sector, and then gains a chunk of time in those final couple of sectors, and clearly that's where that Ferrari is really coming alive, is where Marlon's got so much confidence in the car through those high-speed corners and quicker changes of direction. Maybe it's just the limitations of the front of the car. Oh, was Conor Wright has binned it into the wall. I think, I'm not even sure if he was actually on a flying lap there.
I don't think he
that might
was.
have just been a mistake on the exit for chicane, and that's going to be really quite frustrating for him, because that now means he'll only get one flying lap left. So his tyres might not be fully up to pressure. Temperatures may not be whereabouts he would want them, because typically these guys usually go for 2 flying laps. That's the nice kind of window where the tyres have reached their peak, but you don't end up losing too much of that initial bite and performance from the rubber. And yeah, Conor, uncharacteristic error there from him, and an unnecessary one at that. That is potentially going to hurt him a bit, because he's now, if he wants a chance of getting pole position, he really does have to chuck everything in to this final lap. So it's going to be all or nothing now for Conor.
Ollie Yard up into 4th place. I think that's a sudden change, I believe. I might see a change here as well. Benjamin King is 0.4 up, currently running in 21st, up to 18th now, so not a massive jump at the front. I mean, our top runners, they are all out at the moment. I suppose they've just got about enough time, haven't they? Just a minute left. That's Marlon just coming onto a fast lap now. So we'll stay on board with our pole man for the moment, as he was up on his time into turn 1, but it has diminished again on the exit. Keeping a little eye on him. Oh, no,
he's gone deep.
Yeah, he's decided not to. Right, on to Mark
Toll. That's very much his ultimate limit then.
Yeah, I think so. Right, so on board with Mark Toll, currently running in 3rd. He is ever so slightly, well, he was 0.1 up. Yes, he is on his sector time, so possibly going to see an improvement. I am also seeing Caracas flicking back and forth between 0.1 up, and actually so is Dennis Latz and Razir. So we might see improvements and a bit of a change all the way through the top. Don't think anyone is going to take pole position away at this point.
I think unless Mark Toll has an absolutely magnificent final couple of sectors, that time from Marlon when it first came in, I say that, of course, Conor has still got that one final attempt, and Marlon's already backed out of his after making that error down towards turn 2. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on Mark Toll and Conor. I think that realistically, those are the only 2 drivers that have an opportunity to topple that Ferrari from the top spot. But as soon as that 42.7 went in, it did look like an absolutely stellar time, and it was even so good that Marlon quite clearly was having to push extremely hard to even come close to beating it. So we'll have to see what these guys can do. Mark Toll coming through the final corner now. The drive towards the line, I don't know how much of an improvement this will be, and it was just over 0.05 of a second slower, so it looks like he's reached his sort of ultimate limit. Also, as a fun fact, all of his personal best sectors were all 37.1 to the nearest 10th. So for sectors 1, 2 and 3, all of his personal best were actually the same time for each of those sectors respectively. Not something you see all too often. So a bit of a quirk of this car and track combination. But yeah, Conor right now entering that final sector, but I'm not sure he's going to look to be improving either.
Right, just having a quick look at Terminen. Just got himself inside the top 15. Only a few cars left. They're going to jump back on with Conor right across the line. Improves, but not enough. But 0.098, nothing between them. Oh, Yang Gang up in 11th place, and he is on a flyer still. Just trying to work out what sector he's in at the moment. Oh, there you go, final turn actually. Here we go. Any improvements? Yes, inside the top 10, 7th place. Great effort by him. That is qualifying over. Good effort by all the guys involved. Really good drive. So
yeah, I think that might be a a personal best starting position for him. Can't see the qualifying results from previous races, but in terms of his finishing positions at races, he's never previously broken into the top 15. So, we were saying potentially about how we might see some shuffling up and down the grid, and sort of whether or not it would end up with some guys kind of moving further towards the front. And yeah, Yang Gang is definitely one of those drivers that has made use of that opportunity, and I think has also naturally just found a bit more pace and confidence. I think he's beaten the likes of Karekes, who's sitting in 8th place. So again, not really the Karekes that we're used to seeing. But we always know that he does tend to have extremely good race pace. But Hungaroring, very tricky track to overtake at. And just on a side note, another name that is up there, of a name that we would kind of anticipate being up there, but we haven't seen there for a long time, is Christian Steinhauser, sitting in P9. So he's managed to make his way a bit closer towards the pointy end of the grid as well, starting inside the top 10 this time. And we saw in Tier 1 how strong the BMWs were through the race, and maybe he might be able to make use of that sort of advantage of the long running pace, that BMW, and work his way a little bit up the order. So we'll see how he gets on, but a very interesting qualifying session to get us started here at Hungary.
It's a nice mix as well. It's really good to see such a selection of cars all out together, not just a whole bunch of BMWs and McLarens at the front. It seems to be quite nicely levelled off at the moment. ACC, they seem to have got the bop about right. Right, let's have a quick run through the grid. So on pole we have Marlon Andrade. Second position is Connor Wright. Third is Mark Toll. Fourth is Tommy Rozier. Then we have Marcin Oliars in 5th. Dennis Latz in 6th. Yang Gang in 7th. Grantas Caracas, God, I couldn't pronounce that for some reason then. Grantas Caracas in 8th position. Christian Steinhauser in 9th. And rounding out the top 10 is Leonid Makovkin. So really good for those guys in the top 10. And then carrying on a bit lower down, we've got Marco Yonkers in 11th. Nikolai Polikov in 12th. Alex Torregrossa in 13th. 14th is Jan Climbs. 15th is Yuko Terminin. Do you want to round off the rest of them for me, John?
Yeah, of course. So in then 16th place, we've got, if I'm honest, I can never quite work out how to pronounce the first name, but so we've got Struch in 16th place in that 444 car. Vince van Meerveld, fan favourite, they're down in 17th, a little bit further down than we're used to seeing. He's had some good consistent performances as of late, and has generally been someone we'd expect to see in the top 10, so a bit further down than we would usually expect from him. Paul Jarzabowski in 18th. Matt York again was very fast at Brands Hatch and managed to get that Bentley quite nicely hooked up. The Bentley, I think it's a car that has got good potential around here, but a difficult car to sometimes extract the maximum from. Shooter 80 down in 20th. Benjamin King in 21st. Yannick Ruoff in 22nd, Sheldon Muscat in 23rd, and then Dylan Goslin in 24th to round out the order. So, yeah, and as you were saying, quite a jumbled up grid in terms of the manufacturers. We've also had one very hefty penalty already dished out for Toro Grosso.
Oh, good lord, that's a big hit.
45-second penalty. So I imagine that is something carrying over from Donington Park. I don't recall what incident that may be. Maybe something on lap 1. Usually the penalties, if they're that severe, it tend to be more often than not from the earlier stages of the race, where an instant misjudgment has then had large knock-on consequences.
Oh, I do apologise if we are getting a little bit of disturbance coming through for some reason. A bit of a bit rate drop went on there. It should go back to normal in just a second. What has gone on there? For some reason my bit rate dropped to about 1,000 for a second or two. I think it's trying to catch itself back up. No, not quite there. Come on. What's going on here? Do apologise. It is the outlap at the moment, so not missing out on any of the actual racing action. There we go. I believe it's all sorted itself out. Yes, it has. Not sure what happened there. I think the internet threw a bit of a wobbly. The joys of living in the southwest. So apologies to anyone at home if they're suddenly wondering as to why the cars were doing some sort of weird shuffle across the circuit. And John, are you still there with me?
I am still here, and I think the viewers
goodness.
got a great view of pinball ACC there.
Yeah, I don't know what what on earth was that. Suddenly the little bit rate dropped right off. So not sure what happened there. For whatever reason that was, something threw a bit of a wobbly.
Yes, as someone has properly recognised that we were showcasing the Drift King edition of ACC. It was a creative form of drifting, definitely four-wheel drifting, as they looked more like ice hockey pucks, I think, bouncing around on the circuit. But thankfully, it does look like we are now in working order and we have cars behaving a bit more normally. Otherwise, the turn one is quite the chaotic one at the best of times. It's certainly chaotic here at the Nürburgring because it's quite a hefty run down towards the first corner. That tends to get cars to shuffle around, people looking for space. There's a heavy braking zone, a very tight radius corner, so there can quite often be contacts and an instance down towards turn one, and I think it would have been rather amplified if the pinball effect had been continuing down to that point, but thankfully it looks like for the time being that we've managed to move past that. But everyone on the formation lap now getting themselves organised in each of their grid spots. And yeah, off the start, I think an interesting run down towards turn one could be to see what Mark told us. We know how fast that Porsche is off any sort of form of acceleration zone, and it outclasses every other car off the start. And although it's a decent run towards turn one, I think he could certainly get a nose potentially up the inside or something. So
he's definitely sitting close now, isn't he? He's pretty much as far forward as possible as we roll towards the green light. Who is going to get the go? Green light any moment. Green light, there we go, green light. And actually really good start by Andrade and Connor Wright. Really good start, although the Porsche now starting to get the pace up together, weaving left and right. Where's he going to go? Is he going to try to go around the outside? A little bit squeezed in. It looked like Latz got pushed out.
Yeah, but Connor Wright to the lead.
But Connor Wright. Yeah, great start by him here at Hungaroring. Straight away into turn one, gets away. And if he could hold it together, that would work perfectly for him, because Toll is going to be chasing after the back of Andrade and will slow him down. Although, I believe they're actually on the same... Is Dennis Latz and Andrade the same team? Got very similar liveries. I will double check in a moment once the timing board sorts itself out. So Van Wall, no, they're not teammates at all. I'm just absolutely insane. The only thing that might possibly affect Andrade over the space of the entire race is going to be that his ping is a little bit higher than everyone else's. Hopefully that won't affect it, obviously, here for the 1.5 hours of the Hungaroring. We obviously saw Massoum, who sadly had to leave the championship due to new work commitments. And amazingly, he always had red ping, but always seemed to be very smooth on track. So I wonder if sometimes that little bar's a lie. It's not that accurate, I don't think. But
I think it is sometimes a little bit questionable, but although it does look like for the most part it was generally quite a clean start, someone's race who has gone from bad to worse already. Toro Grosso, I'm not sure what happened. I didn't quite catch the incident, but he has dropped massively off the back of the field, and compounded by that 45-second penalty. That is definitely going to be a tricky one to try to come back from. So hopefully he'll be able to soldier on with that. But yeah, a very disappointing start for him. But yeah, someone who won't be disappointed at all. Connor Wright absolutely outclassed anyone off the first couple of rows, and immediately shot into that first place position, and really has completely put the hammer down, and is already looking like he's trying to extend quite a commanding lead over Marlon, which considering the
Oh,
sort of
big slide! Commentator's curse might have almost come into play then. My lord, back into the old drifting style. Sorry, I had to quickly just cut you off. There's a massive power slide there through turn 4. How he held that together, I have no idea. The car was sideways even before it hit the curb, so he's obviously pushing pretty hard to try and get away. Not quite able to, though. What is going on? I'm just... Oh,
yeah,
please tell me
I think he's definitely pushing very hard at the moment, isn't he?
I've got flying cars on my screen. What is going on? Oh, my ping is fine. Why have I got flying cars? There we go. Fresh PC build, so apologies if we do get the odd quirk. I shall say that. I'm not sure why I had a flying car then. Still getting everything looks fine on my screen. Oh god, John, it's happening again. It's all happening again. Well, someone who's raced... Someone's race who is going fine is Connor Wright, still pulling away. I imagine he's probably set the fastest lap of the race again. I doubt he's been... still the fastest man out there at the moment with a 143.7. Andrade looks like he's managed to pull away slightly from Mark Toll, so...
Oligars and Mavkovkin going side by side as they went toward turn 1 there. I think that's Oligars trying to hold the Bentley behind him. And, it looked like the Bentley had very good momentum down that back straight and was putting pressure onto the McLaren there, but wasn't quite able to do enough. But yeah, those top 3 guys all within 0.05 of a second of each other, so they look like they're sort of trying to pull away from the rest of the field and really be in a class of their own. But definitely a lot of hefty battling still going on in the mid-pack at the moment.
Yeah, having a look over the rear wing of Oligars at the moment, and you can see Mavkovkin absolutely pounding over the curbs in the Bentley. You can really see, though, where these cars differ. Through this section now, where you've got the fast sweeping corners with lots of change of direction, the Bentley looks like it is losing a little bit of ground. Obviously, it's slightly higher centre of gravity. It's not able to change direction quite as quickly. But when it comes to these sort of more stop-start, heavy curbed corners, this is when the Bentley's going to be able to regain the battle. It's slowly draw in the back of that McLaren, and here we're seeing a little bit wide there by Oligars coming through the penultimate turn. Gets a good drive off the corner though. So let's have a quick jump on board with Mavkovkin. Looking forward for him. On the dash of him now. Don't think he's within striking distance this time around though.
On a side note about people looking to try to be within striking distance, last lap Marlon set the fastest lap of the race. That was about 1.5 tenths faster than anyone else, and it's still quite a decent gap to Connor Wright in front of him, but Marlon does look like he might be starting to get a bit more into the groove now. Maybe that Ferrari just taking a bit more time for the tyres to come to him. And we'll have to see what sort of pace he's able to maintain during this stint. Again, it was a slightly longer race than usual. There's that extra 30 minutes on the clock, and that can change a lot about how these cars are set up, how they perform, how these guys approach the race on the whole. But Marlon is definitely looking like he is quite feisty. Another car that is looking to be very racy is Dennis Latz, who over the course of just this first sector has made a decent amount of inroads towards that gearbox of Mark Toll. But again, as you were mentioning earlier, the differences between these cars and where each of them are fast. I think the BMW is generally a car that is quite consistent around the whole lap. The Bentley is one that highlights how good it is over those curves. It's a lot more consistent through that tricky chicane and some of those other corners where you really do have to put high commitment into those curves. But yeah, and then the Porsche, almost a specialist in this final sector, as then Mark Toll looks to try to gap the BMW bit. So there's such a back and forth. I think this is part of the reason, along with how narrow this track is, why it's so difficult sometimes for these cars to overtake around here, because your opportunities are actually very few and far between. Not necessarily just in overtaking themselves, but just car performance as well.
Speaking of overtakes, Meerveld is all over the back of Terminen at the moment. Going through Sector 3, he was very close to the back of that Lexus. So coming into turn 1 now, closes up again on him, applying the pressure. But Mirveld surprisingly far down the grid. Normally much further up the grid, as from last season it was fan favourite Mirveld. But yeah, running in 15th at the moment. Slightly sort of out of character for him to be this far back. Again, Hungaroring isn't, I would say, a fan favourite with ACC, so I don't think many drivers have an abundance of practice here. He does look comfortable, but I wonder if a lot of these guys just don't have the same amount of sort of lap time and seat time here at Hungaroring that some of the other circuits do. Obviously, like Monza and Silverstone, places like that, they get a massive amount of usage across all types of racing on ACC. So I think some of the guys are less experienced, which might explain why some of these big names just aren't as far up the grid as normal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those tracks where, you know, if you look at the online lobbies, the typical ones that everyone goes for are Spa and Monza. Hungary, not exactly one that people like to put so much time into, and that does tend to, like I say, separate.
Oh, we're gonna have to quickly cut you off on that one. Do apologise. We've got Ben King, Roof, and Shooter 80 all squabbling, and actually looks like Ostash is also in the battle as well. These guys, this is the battle for presumably 18th place. Oh, yeah, too wide for the final turn.
It's going to be very tricky as they head towards turn 1. Oh, the Bentley in the background of the exit there. Who was that? That was Dylan Goslin. Had a huge kick of oversteer from the Bentley there.
Oh, and a dive up the inside possibly here from... No, not quite. Yeah, Ostrash not able to make a move. Definitely showed his nose. But while this is going on, Roof is managing to escape ever so slightly in his Lightning McQueen liveried Aston Martin. He's hopefully, while these guys are squabbling, he can make a move. But these guys were really stacked up for a minute or two.
Yeah, and there's also a battle raging on for P5 at the moment. Oliar's desperately trying to hold onto that spot, and he's got Makovkin and Razir, last week's winner, oh sorry, not last week, but last race winner of Razir, hounding back at the back. Oh, the Porsche in the background, Polikov got all over the exit curve there on the exit back chicane, and just about held on to that, but he's lost a decent amount of ground there, and he's got Yang Gang all over the back of his gearbox. Very tricky series of corners to follow through. Got to be careful about track warnings. And behind Yang Gang is Kurekes biding his time now. He's been trying to go towards
trying to get around the outside.
That's really tricky to go side by side through there. They give each other just enough room. Kurekes now going to have the inside line. Will he be able to make this one work? I think he will.
Fantastic
so again,
effort by
Kurekes, really good racecraft. Yeah, that was a very. This is the calm, cool, and collected head of Kurekes that we used to seeing. It all started to get a little bit desperate and unravel at Donington. I think when he got that drive-through penalty, it was a case that he didn't have the amount of time to sort of race and think about these moves that he's used to.
Oh, quickly cutting you off. Sorry, Razir trying to go around the outside and possibly a cut back on turn 1. Trying it, not quite able to. Makovkin shutting the door on him in that great big Bentley, and it is an almighty door to get closed on your face. So apologies for cutting you off there, John. It was it was turn 1 and they were side by side and sort of trying to go for it, so I had to quickly cut in. Looks like Razir lost a little bit of speed there, though, obviously, in that attempt at a switchback. Wasn't quite able to, and ended up backing away. Dennis Latz is looking very fighty with Mark Toll. Mark Toll will be a bit disappointed about this. He is definitely struggling to keep up with second place. He is dropping away, and so looking at lap times, he's doing 1:44s at the moment. Actually, to be fair, he's done a quicker. Dennis Latz has done a quicker lap than Mark Toll, so he'll be pleased with that. But they're both doing sort of mid 1:44s at the moment, whereas the guys at the front, Connor Wright and Andrade, are doing sort of mid to high 1:43s. So quite a significant difference between those guys in pace, which would explain the way those gaps are starting to open up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that battle with Kurekes and Polikov now, Kurekes having got through Yang Gang on the last lap, I think the Kurekes again has got decent race pace, but trying to find the opportunity to make an overtake. He might be somebody that really benefits from taking a different strategy option and just trying to find some clean air. But that Porsche is not the best in a straight line, and now in the toe, going towards turn 1. Karek is looking, trying to go down the inside. Is going to be able to get him under brake?
Yes,
putting up a good fight, but they could be another drag race down towards turn 2. Get a bit of a squeeze on the exit.
Bit of a rub.
Oh, that Porsche is still there. The acceleration is good, but that top end of the McLaren is just a bit high.
Oh my goodness, how Caracas managed to close that door. I don't think you could have got a cigarette paper between those two cars then. Goodness gracious.
By margins, wasn't it? Just that top end of the McLaren just about starting to get the legs on that Porsche on the run down towards turn 2. Just soon enough for him to be able to pull away there. As there's a yellow flag down turn 1 for Sheldon Muscat, and unfortunately, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that may have been contact with Toro Grosso, because I saw a bit of a battle and bumping amongst all of that other action going on not too long ago, and they were very close together on track, and then unfortunately Muscat then dropping massively off the back of the field. So could be wrong on that front, but not having the best of races, and I think that might be quite a heavily damaged Audi there. Seems to be really struggling through that next series of corners. But yeah, that battling in the mid pack for Caracas, and you know, now he's in a prime position for what he'll be wanting to do, to hunt down Tommy Rozier ahead of him. And you know, currently these guys sitting first and second in the championship. Caracas still with a decent lead over Rozier, but Rozier has been masterful in his race at Donington last week, and he's going to be looking to try to get past that Bentley and McCoffkin. But it does look like if there's any car that can give the McLaren a run for its money in top end speed, that Bentley is going to be one of them. And finding a way past that absolute behemoth of a car on the circuit is a difficult enough task at the best of times, let alone somewhere as narrow and as twisty as the Hungaroring.
Bit of an update for the front runners. Connor Wright is losing ground very, very quickly suddenly.
Oh, that was a terrible last lap, wasn't it, for Connor?
Yeah, a 1:44.2 from Connor last time, and a 1:43 from 1:43.6. But over the space of this lap, I mean, Connor is already 0.3 down, and it really looks like Andrade is just driving to the back of him at this point. Andrade is down on his lap time, but he was just that gap.
Sorry, in the meantime, Dennis Latz has got past Mark Toll. Didn't see how that took place.
Missed
but
that
I think
one.
on the last lap, it does look like, just looking at Latz though, he's got to be very careful about track limits there. That could have been a warning, or definitely borderline, but I wonder, has Connor Wright maybe pushed a bit too hard too early and accumulated warnings, and is now having to be very tentative about how he drives here at the Hungaroring? It's so easy to accumulate them early on, and we saw that it was the drive-through that crippled his race last time out at Donington Park. Again, a 44.2 for him, not as much of an advantage for a mile on that last lap. In actual fact, the quickest guys were the two who were previously battling, Dennis Latz and Mark Toll. So Mark Toll hasn't lost sight of potentially trying to get back onto the podium just yet, but yeah, Connor Wright definitely losing pace in comparison to the
possibly
other guys.
a move into turn 1. Sorry, Yarabowski having a little look up the inside of Matt York. Bit too far back. I think he was just showing his nose in an attempt to try and unsettle him ever so slightly. But no, he's
work.
He's backed off ever so slightly now, and coming down through turn 2, and the gap's a little bit bigger. But it does look like Matt York and Yarabowski are catching up with the back of Meerveld and Terminen. They are quite closely packed together, and I'm sure that gap was much, much bigger earlier in the race.
Well, I'll tell you about a gap that is also coming down. It's getting worse for Connor Wright.
It is getting worse. I've just seen it pop up in the chat that Latz has passed Toll. Yeah, pretty sure we shouted that out a couple of laps ago. We did miss the actual move, I'm afraid. But yeah, I think John, you spotted that while I was busy squabbling over the leaders. And yet now down to half a second for Connor Wright back to Andrade. That's becoming quite an issue, isn't it? I think lap times. I mean, they're both really, really down on their best laps. So, I mean, they did absolutely come out the gate flying. We did see Connor Wright going sideways a few times. So again, like you said, maybe he's just pushed a little bit too hard and just maybe sort of done a bit more tyre damage than he needed to at the very beginning of the race. New lap times coming in. Really, really similar again. But so where is Andrade finding this time?
Well, more to the point, Dennis Laps on that last lap was 0.3 of a second faster than anyone else in the top 4. So, you know, really, right now, he's the driver that looks like he's on the move. I don't know if Marlon maybe just getting a little bit bottlenecked by Connor Wright at the moment. You know, these top 3 guys are teammates, so they're not going to be wanting to get too close together and have too much door-to-door bumping. But yeah, there does definitely seem to be sort of this dynamic change of pace differences amongst these guys. I think whilst that gap seems to have extended and settled a little bit for the time being, we've got Mukofkin and Razir still very, very close together on track, and in this opening sector, it does look like Razir has got really, really good pace, but then you can see how cautious he is over the curbs on 6 and 7. That Bentley is able to just take curb after curb and just does not care about it, whereas in the McLaren, probably the lowest ride height car and the most sensitive car to curbs overall, and can just get so easily unsettled by some of these curbs, and particularly with these curbs at turn 6 and 7. There's sometimes these occasions where the McLaren can really kick up and almost do a wheelie, so have to be very, very careful not to attack it too much. But that gap goes down to almost nothing in the opening sector, but then by the time we get to the end of the final sector, it's almost over sort of 2 car lengths. So it's very much this to and fro with these guys, as also Korekis just slowly but surely eating away into that gap of the cars ahead of him, and he'll be hoping that they battle a bit more so that he can start to try to put Tommy under pressure and
Well, yeah, Korekis was 0.4 faster than Tommy last lap, so he's definitely starting to chip away at that, and obviously these two are the leader, first and second in the championship. He's going to want to get that.
Sorry to cut you off. Meerveld and Matt York going side by side towards turn 2. I think that was Matt York trying to get past Meerveld. Meerveld trying to defend now on the inside towards turn 2, and there's contact. Matt York, can he hold on to it? He does just about manage to catch that slide. He won't be too happy about that.
Jarabowski on the hunt as well.
Oh, that's getting very difficult, and Jarabowski is trying to get involved in this side by side towards turn 4. Is not going to be a nice thing for either of these guys. Matt York swoops around the outside and takes that position. Now Jarabowski all over the gearbox of the McLaren, but approaching that chicane now. I don't think he's going to be able to do anything about that. I think Meerveld may have backed off the throttle a little bit and opened the door for Matt York potentially through turn 3 to allow him alongside, because Meerveld, generally speaking, very clean, consistent and fair racer, and I think he may have accepted that contact at turn 2 was a little bit desperate from his point of view, and Matt York eventually managing to get that Bentley up one more position, as another Bentley was trying to get up a position is actually Dylan Goslin, putting Benjamin King under all sorts of pressure, looking towards the inside.
Oh, that's a brave move, and we're currently blocked by a big old banner. So there's one downside to this. The banner does block the view quite a lot there, doesn't it? Oh, big slide there from Goslin as well on the exit, so not able to catch up. Connor Wright appears to have sort of had a bit of a word with himself and suddenly gained a load more pace. He's now doing low 44s, and he's put the gap back up to just over a second. So,
sorry to cut you off there, we've got Yannick Ruoff and Shooter 80 going side by side towards turn 1 with the Strooch right on the gearbox of these guys as well. Very similar to the fight that we actually saw just between Meerveld, York and Jarabowski. And yeah, Ruoff being able to hold that advantage for now, but in the opening sector, that BMW across all of the cars in the grid does look extremely fast, but Shooter 80 not able to make something work just yet, but definitely staying firmly latched on to the back.
Definitely a mistake there from the Aston Martin, a little bit deep into that turn, and oh my goodness!
God, how did Ruoff hold on to that? That was great car control from him. Obviously, unintentional contact from Shooter 80, but great car control from Ruoff to recover that slide. Had to skip the chicane. Hopefully, he didn't get a warning for that because clearly that contact was not his fault. But yeah, you can see even down towards 18th position, we have some pretty aggressive and racy driving, and all of this battling has definitely brought a Struch into the fight as well. So I'll have to see whether or not Shooter 80 and that BMW is able to get a run down towards the first corner again. So keeping an eye.
Caracas having a little look up the inside as well for turn 1.
Top.
I'm going to actually stay on board with these guys because they are very, very close. So Caracas versus Razir. This is first and second in the championship, battling out for 7th place. That's a close one.
Just in the meantime, Ruoff and Shooter 80 going side by side through turn 1. That's brought Struch into this, and there are now almost 3 wide heading towards turn 2. That's going to be tricky. Oh, Shooter 80 I think has gone way too deep into turn 2 there. He's off into the marbles. The Struch might get them both, and he does. The Struch I think
he just
disconnected.
Flew away. He just flew away, didn't he?
The Struch has driven off into Narnia after getting 2 for 1. I think
he's dropping down. I could
yeah,
still select him a moment ago, but possibly that looked like a disconnect, didn't it? Just as a quick one, just seen in the Discord chat that Sheldon Muscat has retired from the race this time round. I think obviously just had too much damage and knew at this point that he was not able to carry on. So just saw it in the Discord that he's decided to, rather than ruin anyone else's race by possibly slowing him up, he has backed out. Quite out of character for Muscat. Seen him battle it out all the way through some races, so obviously just not his race this evening. So like we said, bit of a shame he got caught up with an incident earlier. Yeah, so he'll be upset about that.
Yeah, it's a shame. I didn't see how that damage came about, but it did look like a rather crippled Audi when he was trying to get back. Caracas, he's hounded Tommy enough to make him go defensive towards turn 1. May not mean that you can get an opportunity at turn 1, but does he get good drive on the exit? I think he was aiming for the cutback there, but Tommy defended that really nicely, kind of held him toward the outside through the whole corner. Oh, Tommy did go a little bit deep there, but he will get a good run back up the hill. So it looks like right now the Caracas is definitely the faster of the 2 drivers, and just looking also a bit at the lap times as well. Connor Wright, like you say, does seem to have made a bit more progress at getting in some good laps again, so he's looking to try to re-extend his lead. Dennis Latz is sort of slowly but surely chipping away towards those top 2 guys and is gapping Mark Toll, which unusual to see Mark Toll dropping back from drivers. But yeah, you can see that we're making our way almost towards the hour mark and the first 30 minutes of running. And these guys will start thinking about pit stops at this point. It will mean that they very likely have potentially a very long second stint. But depending on who they're battling and how they're thinking that their cars are going to behave during the course of the race, some people around the hour mark might start to look for quite an aggressive undercut, and that could really start to change things with the order, and see the sort of heroics of George Boothby at Brands Hatch of doing a massive undercut and then just defending for his life all the way to the end of the Grand Prix, the race. So we'll have to see who looks to go for that kind of option. But interesting one.
Something to look out for. Caracas and Razir obviously battling it out. But Polikov and Gang, those 2 guys, they are lapping faster than them, significantly faster, these 2 Porsches. So although they are ever so slightly squabbling, I think they're almost catching up with the back of Caracas. So if he can't get on and get round Tommy sooner than later, he's going to have to go defensive from those 2 Porsches, because they seem very, very quick. And they definitely are outlapping them as they last laps. Polikov and Gang both did 44.8s. and Razir and Caracas both doing 45, 2 and 3 respectively. So they're significantly down on the pace, only half a second. It's not going to take long at that kind of difference in pace for the gap to close right up. And I'm not sure if maybe Gang and Polikov are just accepting to stay in their positions because they know they're outlapping the guys in front and just hoping they can catch up and maybe work together to make some room. I mean, that might be completely bonkers, but it seems to be what's going on at the moment. They're not squabbling too hard. Just trying to have a
yeah, it's definitely an interesting approach from these guys, but I think if anything, Caracas is probably trying to be a bit more cautious than what we saw last week. You know, that the way that he approached last week, getting the drive-through penalty and then losing his head a little bit in that latter portion of the race, not only affected that race in particular very dramatically, but also heavily dampened his chance to once again extend his championship lead, and then lost a huge chunk of points to this man who ended up picking up the pieces from Caracas, from Connor Wright, and taking the win at Donington. So I think Caracas has got that extra pace, but he's just looking to bide his time, trying not to get too concerned. He's still got over an hour to try to make up this position and then move on to the next car. So I think maybe exercising a little bit of patience and a bit more caution, which is good. It reduces the amount of contact that we end up seeing, and obviously maintains some nice close but fair racing up and down the grid. So we'll have to see how that one transpires. But yes, I think definitely the faster car of the two, but just hasn't quite been able to execute that pace in the way they would have liked yet.
Like you said, there's not many sort of action areas. Obviously, turn 1, turn 2, a lot of overtakes seem to go on there, and a little bit of that penultimate turn, obviously in sector 3. You've seen a couple of moves made there, but again, there's not that many places you can get a good run. You you think, great, you've got the inside for one turn, but you're instantly, the track just goes left, right so much that you never consistently get to have the advantage of the inside for 2 corners in a row. It's a real difficult one, and obviously any squabbling on this circuit is going to slow you down significantly. Having a look at the gap at the front, actually is down to half a second now. Andrade again being on the charge. Still not a massive difference between their lap times.
It's kind of come out of nowhere a bit, hasn't it? Oh, yeah. Dennis Latz may have just disconnected. I just saw his car go flying off into the background, and I do believe that unusually might be a second disconnect. Yep, I think that's him having gone from the server. So
he's gone. He has gone.
That's terrible news for him, and also terrible news for the Vanwall SimSport guys who had locked out the podium spots with that current running order. And Dennis Latz was looking good. He had good pace, but unfortunately technical issues getting the better of him as well. As Marlon had a bit of a wonky run through the chicane there and lost quite a bit of ground on Connor Wright. So that gap opening up just a bit again. But that is incredibly disappointing for Dennis Latz there, and we haven't tended to see that many disconnects in recent times in ATC, so I don't know if that is more from a personal home perspective, but yeah, very, very unfortunate and disappointing for his race.
Yeah, just having a quick look at the YouTube chat. Apologies, I've been distracted, guys, this evening. I haven't kept too close of an eye. But Andy Vandervelde just saying no. Well, that's a shame. Yeah, it was almost a 1-2-3 for the Vanwall guys. So they'll be disappointed with that. But at least they still have 2 cars up there fighting the good fight. Just having a little flick back through. Oh goodness, where are we looking? Starquake, I saw your comment a little bit earlier, but we were in the middle of chatting. Yeah, don't worry about it, it's all good. Digital motorsport isn't for everyone. It takes a little while to get into, but I assure you, it's a great place to watch it. As I say, if you were watching last night with Tier 1, you had the masterclass that is Rage on the mic. So I'm sure if anyone can make it interesting, it is him. To be fair, he's got years of practice.
Just to pull away slightly, the battle is getting very, very close on track as, the number 7 car, that's Toro Grosso. Toro Grosso's pulled off to the side of the road, so I think maybe he's just, we were saying that his race started poorly. He also had that 45-second penalty. It doesn't look like a disconnect. It could potentially be a technical issue, but given the circumstances surrounding his race, I'm more inclined to think that maybe he's just decided to retire at full today, although he hasn't left the pits and now yet. So I think that potentially might be it for Toro Grosso there. So that's a shame from his side of things, but the battle that I was looking at actually at the time was that Wim van Meerveld, who really does seem to be struggling a lot for pace this week, has been put under a constant amount of pressure over these last few laps by Jan Zabowski. As also we've got Jan Climbs and Terminen up ahead, just in front of those previous guys. And Matt York looking to put Terminen under all sorts of pressure in the final sector.
Oh, yes,
so
he is.
It's a bit of a back and forth with these guys as well.
Looking over the rear wing now of Terminen coming into the final turn. Yet the Bentley of Matt York all over the back of him. Oh, great run out the final turn there by Terminen, though. Really got that Lexus.
Turn 1, Caracas has sent it down the inside of Brazier and got all caught up over the inside curb. Brazier was able to hold that line around the outside. It was a very late dive bomb from Caracas, maybe getting a little bit impatient now, and almost ended up actually spinning themselves round. That inside curb is deceptively steep, and can't like the McLaren, it really can get underneath you and make you lose a lot of grip. And yeah, the outcome of that is he's just dropped back away from Brazier again, and those Porsches behind. Polikov gapped Yang Gang a little bit now, but he'll be looking at this battle with the McLaren with a great deal of interest as he tries to get involved. But yeah, Caracas maybe again just seeing these sort of small cracks in the armour as then Brazier makes a mistake, Caracas makes the same mistake. So these guys really pushing on, and now Caracas is under all sorts of pressure from that Porsche of Polikov, and this is now the sector where that Porsche is mighty. And Caracas, the one thing that he does not want to do is he does not want any cars between him and his championship rival, but depending on how Polikov plays it, maybe exactly how that looks to play out. Caracas, though, has held on to the position for now, and I think unless Polikov can get alongside before the start-finish straight, that McLaren should out-drag the Porsche down towards turn 1. But
Polikov looking to the inside there, wasn't he, on that penultimate turn? He's really trying to get the run, and looks like a really good run by Polikov there. Oh, massively wide.
Driving into Narnia on the exit, trying to carry all the momentum and some more, but I don't think that's going to particularly benefit him, and I think that'll be his chance of making a move on Caracas, all said and done. And Caracas might now look to try and focus on reeling in that McLaren of Brazier again, but yeah, very
pit stops.
difficult.
Sorry, quickly got a quick one. Pit stops rolling in. Van Meerveld coming in, and Jarabowski also coming into the pits. So the first of our guys to pit, that's 15th and 16th place, and those two were squabbling it out on track. So both coming in at identical times.
Surprised actually that they decided to do their pit stops at the same time. You would assume that whoever was in front, which I think was Meerveld at the time, would have meant that Jarabowski would have done the opposite. Quite often the way that we see these sorts of strategies play out, and particularly in GT racing, it's not just the opposite for maybe just the following lap. It can be the opposite for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. But yeah, definitely not the sort of convention that we're used to seeing with these guys. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up coming out of the pits first. Jarabowski is moving as he looks to close up towards Meerveld. Meerveld about to leave his box. They're going to be side by side on the exit of the pits. Meerveld on the inside curb before they even get towards the first apex is going to try to hold that line towards the first corner. Tiny bit of contact there with Jarabowski through the middle of that turn. I think Jarabowski just turned in a little bit too harshly there, with maybe not expecting that McLaren on such a tight inside line to run as wide as he did. But what these guys need to do now, they need to calm this battle down just a little bit between them, and just think about the long game, because these are the first pitters. If they put in some quick, consistent laps, they can potentially jump up the order quite a bit, because we've seen the lap times change by almost 1.5 seconds on average throughout the field from the lap times they were doing at the beginning versus what they're doing now. So if they actually calm down their fight a bit, they could seriously make some very, very big inroads to those guys in front. So we'll have to see how they decide to play that one.
Another person that's just come into the pits is Matt York. He was all over the back of Terminen and Climbs. So
speaking of which, those two are going side by side. Sorry to cut you off. Jan Climbs and Terminen battling through turn 2, and this potentially plays into Matt York's hands greatly as the power of the Lexus absolutely soars past the Porsche up the hill, using that big V8 to great effect. And Jan Climbs has just looked a little bit scruffy over the last few laps. I think those tyres really starting to give out on the Porsche now, but that squabbling may have really benefited Matt York then, particularly as he'll be on that sort of undercut style strategy. So we'll have to see how this ends up playing out, but a great opportunistic kind of 3-corner setup for Terminen there to get that move done on Jan Climbs.
yeah, great effort by him. I do apologise. I, for some reason, could not quite find him on my listings. So I did try and cut back to catch the battle. We did miss that one, I'm afraid. On board with Yang Gang. Oh, well, maybe not. He's coming into the pit as well. He was fighting with the back of Polikov, who he had caught up with him quite a lot. A couple of cars into the pits. Who was that?
as well. So that's going to be an important one.
Yeah, so
actually under pressure from Polikov again. So that could be very beneficial potentially for Brazil.
Well, the ones to look out for is going to be whereabouts when Caracas does his pit is where he comes out again. Be interesting to see how far they go. I mean, I know I've seen it in previous seasons just how far the McLaren can go on a single tank. You think 40 minutes of the race done now, so nearly halfway through. These cars have probably got another good sort of 20 minutes in them.
Yes, so we're coming up for the halfway mark.
Oh, I think we've got some dubstep cars going on for some reason on the screen.
Yeah, just looking at other strategies, and Matt York. That's rather unfortunate. Just in the meantime, as an update on the position for 18th, Matt York did come out in front of that battle of Meerveld.
Yeah, I think it's just getting itself together now. So I wonder if the issue I'm facing is.
Sorry, there's a battle with. Sorry, can you see any?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I got my cameras back.
So Jarzembowski and Meerveld went side by side through turn 1 there, and Meerveld again just about able to hold on to that position. So these guys continuing that battle that we saw between them on the exits of their pit stops, and that's allowing Matt York to quite nicely run away and look to chase down Yan Gang ahead of him, who we'll have to see where some of these guys come out, because Razia did his undercut and Makovkin has come into the pits, and so has Caracas. So this is not just important for this race, it might not be the most exciting of positions, but in terms of the championship, this could be very interesting, because Makovkin was under a decent amount of pressure from Razia when he went to dive into the pits, and Razia on those fresh set of tyres, we know he's got good pace. I think he's had a fairly clean lap so far, so where will he emerge? Has he made the undercut work? Makovkin moving in the pits now. We suspect that Caracas is going to be moving shortly as well. He is. He's not going to be too far away. He's actually going to be, well, he's actually going to be basically in sight of the Bentley as they leave the pit exits. But Razia has got the pair of them. Yep. So in terms of the championship, that is exactly what Caracas didn't want, because
Caracas already on the attack though.
Perfectly.
Caracas definitely already on the attack, looking at the inside of Makovkin there in turn 1. And a little bit of a look up the inside again for turn 2, but not able to make anything work. But yeah, like you said, absolutely devastating for Caracas' championship. That's that's a big old gap coming through there now.
That's really not going to help him, and this puts Razier in a very good position to have clean air. He has no one in front of him, and as Oliars has also come into the pits now as well, so he was being put under pressure from Makovkin. So I think there's the chance here that Razier may end up actually jumping Oliars as well, which would look to put him, I think, into effective P5, which would be an extraordinary effort for just such a small undercut. As Makovkin running very, very wide as they head through turn 11. He's got to be so careful about those warnings. So where is Oliars going to emerge? The lead is still quite happy to stick it out at the front at the moment, but
there you go. Oliars just starting to roll now.
Very quick at the moment. Looking very, very fast. Oliars has left his pit box. Where is Razier going to be? Where is Oliars going to
If he can get the
emerge?
power down, Oliars might be able to hold it to the inside. No, not quite. Oh, yes, maybe. Can he hold on to it? He's there. He is up the inside.
Razier's going to get it.
Turn 2 is going to go to Razier, though. Oh, I just saw a drive-through penalty come up for someone, and now they've gone. We're down to 19 races this evening. It's a bit of a thin grid at this point.
That was Shooter 80, I believe. Yeah, I think Shooter 80 just left. But wow, what an absolutely phenomenal move there for Razier. And again, in terms of championship, there's now 2 cars between him and Krekes, who hasn't just got the Bentley in front to worry about. He's got Jan Gang, who is going to be on a fresher set of tyres in comparison to these guys. He is looking extremely racy at the moment, so if Krekes isn't careful, he could end up with a fair amount of space and cars between him and his championship rivals. So yeah, that strategy from Razier was absolutely inspired, and again, he's now put himself in a position where if he's able to run away from Oliars, which he looks to be doing so far, he could go hunting after the likes of Polikov, who still hasn't pitted, but important people that have, Connorite and Mark Toll. So we'll have to see where they emerge. I think they should be safe in terms of being jumped from Razier, especially with that battling that Razier had to do on the last lap, as he was trying to get past Oliars. But I think Polikov's P4 position could potentially be under quite a decent amount of threat. You see where Connor Wright already into turn 1, so he is absolutely fine, and so is Mark Toll. So they're not going to be challenged by Razier at all. But
Connor Wright looks like he's all on his own, really. He's got no one around him. His pit exit is, track position-wise, as perfect as it can be, really. No one around him to battle with. He looks like he's having quite a nice sort of race to himself. A quick one, do apologies, I think some of the connection issues, I'm not sure if possibly it is an ACC issue, because, as I say, I'm having some stability issues myself, which nothing on my end seems to be telling me why. So I wonder if possibly it is maybe an ACC issue this evening, why we've lost a few guys to disconnects. As I think if I was trying to race and the issues I had with stability I think it probably would have caused me to crash. So, oh, there we go, Amjad and Polikov in, and Yonkers as well. So that is the entire field pitted.
Sorry, in the meantime, I was just keeping an eye on Oliars going through that middle sector. He got very, very wonky through that chicane. Fortunately, didn't get too caught up over it, so he looks like he'll hold on to that position for now. But yes, Marlon pitting. Where is he going to emerge relative to Connor? And is Polikov going to have lost that position to Razier? Razier coming through turn 12 at the moment. We'll see when these guys in the pits look like they're going to start moving. Polikov's down, and he's ahead of Marlon. Polikov is ahead of Marlon, which is completely based on the pit stop, so that's a massive surprise. They're both, I think, going to be very far ahead of Razier. Where's Mark Toll going to come out in this? Mark Toll is behind them both, so Polikov...
Great pit strategy by him.
Well, I'm almost slightly concerned, because If this is an open pit strategy and these guys have the opportunity to do refueling, I mean, he must have changed tyres. The only way that he would have a pit stop that much faster is either if it was through lack of not repairing damage, or if he didn't change tyres. Based on how he's emerged out of the pits and already pulled away from Marlon, I can only assume that he has changed his tyres. But I wouldn't have thought that Marlon would have had that much damage. So I'm absolutely gobsmacked as to if this is a true representation of where Polyakov is in this race. I'm absolutely taken aback about how much of an advantage he seems to have gained over everyone around him. It's extraordinary if he'd made it work. He was a bit of a random strategy calling in Nürburgring after pitting, I think, with only something like 15 to 10 minutes left to go, and it definitely didn't work out for him there. But if this has worked out, he's not coming into the pit, so I'm assuming that he's at least somewhat happy with what he's done. That this is an absolute sensational strategy.
Yeah, I mean, seeing it in the chat now as well, Andy Vanderbilt coming in saying you must not have changed tyres, surely. Yeah, I don't know how he did that. I mean, we'll be able to tell via his lap times as to what they can do. Obviously, he hasn't done a flyer yet. Just having a little look at the times around him. Who is this? Got Andrade running in third. Also, obviously himself not on a flyer yet. Significantly slower on. Yeah, on that lap time. Like, if you include the pit stops, I mean, obviously depending on where in the pit they're placed, on that pit lap it was a 2:28 from Polyakov, and it was a 2:40.
I think, Storan, just to cut you off there,
yeah.
I think we have found our answer on that front. I'm very confident now that he did not change tyres, because within the space of just a few corners, that advantage has completely disappeared. So well, if this is if that was intentional, that is an exceptionally bold call to make, considering that the disadvantage at this point in the race is already about 1.5 seconds a lap. If he's looking to take those tyres all the way to the end, as this is causing Marlon to lose a great deal of time, and has got Mark Toll all over the gearbox. So if this is really not benefited anyone, I would say, other than Mark Toll, in order for him to be able to gain a huge amount on these guys, because Polyakov, I just cannot see how that strategy is going to work in the long run, because you know, the rest of the top 10 is only a handful of seconds behind him, and there's still 40 minutes of this race to go, and those tyres are just going to get worse and worse, and I think this will be him losing the position now.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to do it under braking. He's not going to be able to hold off that Ferrari under braking, or is he?
He's trying to, but I don't think he's going to have the grip around the outside there. He'll have the acceleration initially out the corner.
Is he going to be able to hold it for turn 2?
Oh, Mark Toll down the outside as well. I think, no, Marlon has got that move done, so he'll get ahead. I think Mark Toll might have a bit more trouble, because it is like-for-like cars. He's not going to have the same sort of straight-line speed advantage that the Ferrari had. But yes, Polyakov, I feel like this is, unfortunately, about as bold a move and as successful a move as we saw from what he decided to do at the Nürburgring, and I think he's potentially taking himself out of an incredibly good and strong performance, as Mark Toll thinking about a move towards turn 6 and 7 chicane. Polyakov having to escape to the side of the track there. They're going side by side still. Polyakov defending for his life through that series of corners as they head through 9, and then going to go side by side through 10 again. You would think that the advantage would go to Toll, and it will, with that fresh rubber on the car. That is exactly the sort of thing I would expect, and I don't think it's going to be very long at all before Polyakov has the likes of Razier hunting him down. Great battle between those two, but I think definitely highlighting the questionable choice that maybe Polyakov has made here.
I wonder if that was intentional, or whether it's just I don't see. I mean, at this point, if he has to pit again for tyres, that's his race done, isn't it? He's massively off the pace. That would almost certainly put him towards the very back of the grid. He'd lose a lot of position, stopping for tyres. But you've got to think, how many places is he just going to lose just from being that far off the pace? And obviously with diminished grip and handling, if he causes incidents, it might not just affect this race. He may then carry penalties into the sixth round, which again is even more damaging. So does he just cut his losses and pit and do the tyres, or was this a strategy and he thinks he can just keep going? I mean, it's a bold strategy at best.
It's an incredibly bold strategy, and I seriously think that it was the wrong call. You can see massive slide for him there through turn 5. I would almost be concerned, considering how heavy the bumps and the loads are through the tyres around here. I would almost be concerned about getting a peak.
Just a quick one. Caracas probably about to lose a position to Gang. He had a massive slide on the entrance to the chicane, just about held it together and got it back on the track for the exit. But he was all over the back of Makovkin, but now that gap has absolutely expanded away from him, and Gang is now all over the back of Caracas.
I want to look towards Razir and Polikov again, because Razir definitely all over the gearbox now of Polikov, and I think that there's going to be a move. Oh, I thought it'd be at turn 1. He was looking for a dive even earlier than that, and that's caused Polikov to go deep.
There's a slight
There's
rub.
contact on the exit. Razir's got to be careful not to compromise his race too much, but he did not want to hang around behind that Porsche and lose too much time. And now this is where it's going to get really interesting, because Razir should be able to run away here, but now you've got Olyars who might look to set up and move towards turn 1. We know that straight line speed advantage is going to be significant, and Polikov's tried to defend this before, but this is going to allow potentially Makovkin and Korekis to close up as well. But
gone already, isn't it?
Great braking there from Olyars, absolutely perfectly spotted, losing no time at all. But yeah, Polikov, I would be extremely surprised if he made the strategy call intentionally, because surely the level of drop-off he would have seen of the tyres in the beginning of the race, it would just not make sense, because we've got Makovkin trying to go down the inside towards turn 4. That's got to be really, really careful through there. He thinks better of it. Both of them run wide, just on very awkward lines. That brings Korekis back into it, who's managed to, like say, get away from Jan Gang a bit. But Polikov all the time, and through this middle sector, is going to be painful for these guys on the fresh tyres, because there is just almost nothing they can do about that Porsche in front of them. They just have to sit in single file. You can see every single corner, the 2 McLarens ahead of them are just pulling further and further away, and this is really, really going to be hurting these guys.
Yeah,
Makovkin, they are losing.
Makovkin looks like he's now really struggling to hold off Caracas as well. Obviously, Makovkin's pace being... Oh, here we go. Possible move. And a move around the outside for Caracas. Has he made it work? Oh, I'm not sure he's got the advantage here. Oh, there's contact. That was quite a big touch. And look at that, Gang taking full advantage. And again, a bit of a rub. Oh, Makovkin's race. That did not go to plan for Makovkin. Oh, not sure how that looked from your angle, but it didn't look the best for Makovkin there. I think a little bit of possible frustration from Caracas and Gang, because obviously they caught up at the back of Makovkin very quickly whilst they were all stuck behind Polikov. Caracas trying to get up the inside.
Oh, that's a late dive.
It's very late. He's not going to have contact. He's not going to have to run for turn 2 either, is he? Unless Caracas can go around the outside. But there we go. We've got Gang also looking to take advantage. Gang trying to go up the inside of Caracas there. I think
painful for Caracas.
Yeah. I think after the race we may see some incident reports coming around this one. I would not be surprised if lap 31 we see some incident report. Oh, no, sorry, lap 30 we see... Oh, mistake from Polikov. Can't keep the car there, but manages to hold the inside. But it is forcing Caracas out wide, and he gets a nudge. Polikov is not able to keep the car on the track, and now all 4 of them squabbling, and a massive dive from the girl.
Oh, it's huge!
It's all gone wrong. That was not the best move. I'm going to go for a replay on that one, on the helicam.
I think Makovkin hit Yang Gang and just absolutely cannonballed him into everybody else. That was, oh, what an absolute shame. We had incredible racing until that point.
Right, so on board with the replay, obviously see Polikov's got the inside for turn 5. Ends up pushing Caracas out slightly wide, and again they nearly rub. Oh, I think actually it might have been a slight bit of contact between Makovkin and Polikov. Not Polikov, between... Oh god, I forgot the names. Who was it battling there? My brain's gone.
Yang Gang was the other Porsche. If it
Yeah,
was...
I think it might have been Yang Gang and Makovkin might have had a slight rub.
Yeah. Makovkin just fired Yang Gang into the cars ahead, and that's... I mean, I think that's definitely frustration coming out. Just to update you, Makovkin overtaking Polikov in towards turn 1. There's contact again between those two. Makovkin trying to make his way through there. Polikov still holding on the outside. I don't think there's going to be too much he can do. It's a very valiant effort around the outside, but I think Polikov's just going to run out of grip there. But I think Makovkin just getting a bit frustrated there at how he lost that position to Korekis. I was going to say, when that fight eventually died down, the move from Korekis was absolutely inspired. How he braked that late, so late into that corner to try and go around the outside of turn 12, and I think it just completely caught Makovkin off guard. He got a bit loose on the exit of the corner, and then they kind of pinched towards each other as they then headed towards 13. And I think that the way that those two made contact was unfortunate and was hard, but I'd say within the sort of realms of fair racing. But yeah, that was, I think, just frustration coming out there from Makovkin, and yeah, that's going to be a hefty penalty for him, because that affected 3 different drivers in one questionable move. In the meantime, we've also got Polikov that's now under pressure from Yonkers as well. Yonkers has snuck his way up the order, taking great advantage of all of these other guys battling, and I think Yonkers was on a very, very late pit strategy, so he has much fresher tyres than just about everybody in front of him. So
yeah, I think in turn 1 we're going to see a move, aren't we? Definitely in turn 1 there's going to be something happen. He's going to be able to outbrake that Porsche, and I think Polikov has kind of accepted his fate. Oh god,
still fighting reasonably valiantly, to be fair, but
yeah, Yonkers sort of held him out to the outside and stopped him from being able to turn in and try and close the door. Caracas obviously now down in 10th place after that incident. We saw him, obviously he slid sideways into the entrance of the chicane, so that did not go to plan for him, and he's actually now battling out with Steinhauser. So again, another 2 cars about to come up on the back of Polikov, and I wonder what sort of attitude Caracas will have when he gets there.
Yeah, I think, well, Korekis is going to go one of 2 ways. He, I think that generally Korekis has actually driven very smartly today, and I think that that instant there is, and potentially his finishing position is not going to do how he's driven today justice, because he's generally been extremely patient, very opportunistic, and when he's been given any form of a gap, he has gone for it, and 9 times out of 10 he has made it work. But he has exercised some great patience as he's then pushing a bit too hard there, and then he's going to have to make sure he backs off sufficiently there as to not get a warning, because the last thing he wants to do now is to get a drive-through penalty. But yeah, Korekis, as someone's got a drive-through, Vince van Meerveld through that very same corner down in P14, so he is going to be very disappointed, much like all of his supporters, for that one. And still half an hour to go, and it's so easy to potentially accumulate these warnings, as now Christian Steinhauser looking to put a move on that Porsche, and Polikov just continuing to drop further and further down the order. He will get a bit of relief potentially after Korekis passes him, but looks like it's going to be an easy move for Steinhauser, and that might even open the door for Korekis. Korekis trying to go towards the outside, a little bit of a bump on the run towards turn 2. Can he go around the outside? He's trying to make this move work already. It's difficult to get the amount of grip that you want there.
He's going to try and go for the inside for turn 3.
That's going to be really tricky. Polikov, to be fair to him, gave him room. So really, really smart driving between those two, and considering the tyres that Polikov is on, absolute credit to him for making it work. Korekis, he was trying to carry that momentum towards the inside. That's a move that's so dangerous if you're trying to pull that one off, because you carry so much more speed, and if the other driver decides to defend it, which they are entitled to do, that gap disappears and the closing speed is huge. So he was very lucky there to get away from that without contact. But absolutely tremendous driving there from Polikov to actually remain in control of this car and still give a rather frustrated and clearly, even with the damage, much faster McLaren of Korekis there. But I think that maybe once they get down towards turn 1, I think potentially that's going to be Polikov's fight for 9th place over and done with. And then the question will be, can Matt York, who after really being nowhere in qualifying with all these battles, and you know, Yang Gang has ended up behind him for the way that he was snookered across the 6-7 chicane, Matt York might even manage to find his way in towards the top 10, which I'm sure he'll be quite pleased about with that result. And I think with the likes of Makovkin maybe getting penalties after this race, he could even get promoted slightly further up the order. But
yeah, I think we
Korekis
could
now
see Matt York definitely inside the top 10. There we go, into turn 1, Korekis up the inside, Polikov giving him the room. I think he kind of knew what was going on.
Sorry, simultaneously, we've also got Makovkin and Yonkers going side by side as well. Yonkers, I said, on those fresher tyres, would be extremely fast, and he's looking to get side by side action through turn 3 again. Makovkin was giving a bit of space there. I think Yonkers actually got a little bit afraid. I think he knows that not just the pace difference that he's got right now, but also that penalty that Makovkin, I am sure, will be looking to get. The way that the penalties are likely to be applied after this race means that he will end up with a time penalty for the following race, but will also get a points reduction for this race. So Yonkers doesn't necessarily gain any more points if he doesn't finish in front of him, but in relative terms it will benefit Yonkers and everyone else in the grid when that penalty is dished out. But yeah, it's pushing very hard, but I would imagine with the tyre difference and that Bentley must be suffering, because that was a big impact between him and Yang Gang that set off that whole chain of events. That I think that Bentley is definitely struggling for pace at this point.
I'm going to come out and say it, that Korekis has not pulled away from Polikov in the same way that everyone else has. So I think that McLaren is carrying quite a significant amount of damage, especially through the end of Sector 2, beginning of Sector 3, where we had seen it reasonably dominant. Obviously, like we said, that low-down squat car. It really hasn't pulled away from Polikov. I mean, in the background, the rate that Matt York is catching the back of Polikov is far greater than the speed that Korekis is pulling away from him. So I think almost certainly going to see Matt York inside the top 10 before the end of the race, but I don't think Korekis is going to be able to go much further forward. I don't think he's going to be able to. He might get past Steinhauser. I mean, we say, yeah, you look at Korekis' last lap was a 1:45.3, and Christian Steinhauser's was a 44.8. So, you know, there's a good half a second a lap between these guys, and there's not a lot on their bests this, you know, since the pit stops as well. They're very, very similar on lap times. What, 0.03 of a second between them? Like nothing at all, really. So this could be a real nice change for Steinhauser getting up into the top 8. Like we said, he was really good last season. I think he got either I think it was a second or a first at Kailami last season with the opening round. I think it was actually second place on the opening round.
To the Lamborghini, wasn't it?
Yes, at the Nyan Cat Lamborghini. Yeah. So. Oh, and Gang in 12th place picks up a drive-through penalty, so that's going to be track limits. So that opens it up for Matt York. He is definitely not going to have to worry about Gang trying to take the positions away from him. I've noticed that Mirveld, we saw him get a drive-through earlier, is now just sat in the pits. So whether he has just decided that he is done.
He may have. Just to go off slightly, the battle was really hotting up, quite surprisingly, is between Tommy Rozier and Martin Oliars. So Rozier jumped Oliars during those pit stops with that really good undercut, and he looked initially like he was able to pull away, but Oliars has definitely reeled him in, and over these last few laps there hasn't been much to choose between them. Very similar cars, looks like they've got pretty similar pace overall, but just Oliars just has that bit more confidence. I don't know, maybe Rozier's exercising a bit of caution, maybe he's almost reached the limit before getting a drive-through penalty in terms of warning, so he might be just having to back off a bit. But Oliars definitely seems to be the fastest car out of the pair, and on that last lap he was glued to the gearbox through the final sector and down towards the run for turn 1. Zero's opened it up slightly, but
big, very wide by Oligars then, wasn't it? It was very wide. So yeah, like you said, maybe he hasn't got quite so many track limit warnings. Yeah, Matt York within 0.4 of Polikov now, so I think we're going to see a move there at some point. I'll try and keep an eye on kind of everything going on at once.
It does seem like an inevitability though for Polikov to fall outside the top 10. And again, I can only imagine that was a strategic mistake. I think Matt York almost got caught out there under braking, not anticipating how much earlier Polikov's reacting to get onto the brakes at the moment with those tyres. I mean, it's been incredibly valiant and smart drive from Polikov since that strategic error, shall we call it, whether it be by a misclick or by a desperate attempt to do something special, or whilst it did do some great heroics, as Matt York sends it down towards turn 1. Polikov is going to try again to fight on the outside. He might have a bit more of an advantage accelerating against this Bentley for the time being, but the Bentley just has so much power. Bentley seems really good on the straights at Hungary, and Matt York not even having to particularly cover that off down towards turn 2. So quite an easy move for him in the end, and that will get Matt York up into the top 10. And yeah, Karekas obviously in the end was able to pull quite a decent gap ahead of Polikov, but now the question is that on that last lap he was a couple of tenths slower than Steinhauser and the likes of Yonkers and Makovkin ahead of him, so I don't think he's going to be going any further forwards, exactly as he said. But what can Matt York do now that he's been released into clean air? Because he's been putting in good, consistent laps, and that car of Karekas is seemingly very wounded, lapping sort of in the low 45s at the moment. So we'll have to see what Matt York can do now that he has been released. But I think that gap could potentially come down with 20 minutes worth of running. It's about 11 or so laps to go. I think that we could definitely see a battle for the outside of the top 10 in the remaining minutes of this race.
Yeah, do apologise, a few more little stability issues there going on with the stream, but we did manage to see Matt York get past, and was trying to look back to see just how quickly he was pulling away from Polikov. But over the space of a lap, you can see there's a fair few cars linked between them, and I think Yaroboski's going to go for it.
Sorry to say that Makovkin and Yonkers almost came together at turn 1 there. Yonkers was absolutely glued to the gearbox of the Bentley, and then ran slightly deep, and at the same time, the battle between Oliars and Razir is raging on there, extremely close on track, but Oliars still not able to make a move. So I think it's calmed down just for a brief moment for the time being, but it was looking rather interesting again in that first sector.
Ooh, yeah, just watch the replay of that turn 1. It looked very much like Yonkers almost nearly outbraked himself and hit the back of the Makovkin. Just as a quick one, I've just realised whenever I use the replay, it gets rid of all the liveries. So just for a moment, we lost all the liveries. So the Makovkin's car goes pink for some reason. And I'm not sure if it is because of the replay that we have...
Yes, I noticed that. Makovkin...
Tonight is not the night for stability issues, is it? I'm not sure whether that's on our... I think it must be an ACC thing. I'm seeing in the Discord a fair few guys have suffered with issues this evening. I don't think it's necessarily anything on our end. But yeah, I do apologise for anyone viewing at home. There is a
genuinely dirty.
Oof, and again, big wobble there. So he just jumped on with Connor right
meantime,
quickly.
I'll try to keep you updated on other things. We've got Yonkers and we've got Makovkin and Yonkers still battling very hard towards turn 1. There's a bit of a weird exit there for Yonkers as they went through that series of corners, but it does look like Makovkin will hold on for now, as does Razir. How are we looking on the flying cars front?
It's still looking pretty dubsteppy at the moment. Apologies on that. Could not see any reason for it. So bits are still over 6,000. It's not saying I'm dropping any frames on OBS, but I'm getting some very, very strange on-screen antics. So apologies for everyone watching at home. As much as you, I want to be watching this as well. And currently, yeah, it's not a streaming thing. It's definitely an in-game thing. Even when I just watch the straight in-game screen, it is all over the place. So apologies. We're just kind of looking at Razir flecking about all over the place. I'm not sure what's gone on there. I don't want to risk leaving and coming back, but I think we might have to.
I think I can at least provide some updates for whatever reason.
I think I might have to restart the game and come back into this. Oh, Polykov just got himself a drive-through. I can see that on my timing screen. Yeah, I'm going to quickly dip out and come back in so we can catch the last 15 minutes of the race, hopefully with something that is watchable, because I do apologise for anyone that has any sort of photosensitive conditions. This is not particularly good watching. Just going to see if it will settle. It looked like it was about to sort itself out. Right, I've just cut to a static car just to see what's going on. But no, I can hear sound-wise that it is not sounding great. So, still got the bits, haven't got the images. Right, yes, okay, I'm going to quickly dip out and then come back in again. So the stream will continue, it will just be on the... Oh, and it's fixed itself. No, it hasn't. Right, I'm going to dip back out and come back in game-wise, and we'll try and get the last 15 minutes of this race actually something that is watchable, guys. So I do apologise, I'm not sure if it's something going on server-wise or what, not sure. So give me 2 minutes. John will be able to keep us up to date with sort of live radio just while I cut into it, but give me 2 minutes to sort this out. Can you still hear me, John? Oh, I do believe we've lost John. What's gone on there? Why have I lost John as well?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I'm not sure why it wasn't coming through for a little while.
So I think, yeah, I think there seems to be a lot of instability going on. I've tried keeping an eye on sort of the battles that we've had going on. Razir's been able to maintain his position ahead of Oliar's. Yonkers and Makovkin have been battling very hard as well, but they have stayed the same. And there's another battle down in 14th place with Ruoff and Goslin, which is still going very, very close together as Goslin down the inside as they head through turn 11. That got very, very tricky between those two as they go down to 12, as then a huge chunk of drivers have just disappeared off the leaderboard for me. So I think potentially further emphasising the extent But yeah, we've got absolutely glued to the back of this car. But then it does seem to like things have settled down for the moment. How are we looking from a stream point of view?
I'm back in the server, but it's not looking nice whatsoever. It's just completely dropped off there. Goodness gracious. So the stability issues not doing me any favours at the moment, and again massively apologise that this is going on. It's looking like on the ping as well, it looks like Android and Toll are both having issues with theirs. So I can keep an eye on the live timing. The timing screen's working, it's just the video feed coming through is absolutely abysmal. There's no one I can cut to in the pit either to sort of try and make this look better.
Yeah.
So
Mark Toll, I think, actually may have just disconnected.
Right, okay. Yeah. Well, on my screen he is still moving, but that might just be because it's all trying to play catch up on my end. No, I think he's disconnected as well. Entirely sure as to what has gone on this evening with it. We are doing everything we can to try and keep things going. But I'm very, very aware that this is
Yep, he has. Actually, I don't.
Some sort of server issue possibly going on here, because I have just lost all of it. So trying very best to try and sort this and try and catch the last 10 minutes of this race.
Of this race.
Hello John, you can hear me again, can you?
I can just about hear you, yes.
Right, yeah, not sure as to why, but it just kicked me out of the server, so let's try and go back in again.
Just as a little bit of an update, I think as far as close battles we did have, Rozier and Oliar sort of maintained position, as have McLaughlin and Yonkers, as well as Ruoff and Costin. So there's been a lot of hard battling in the meantime, but Mark Toll is still breaking the laws of physics and driving through every wall of the circuit. So he still somehow seems to be connected to the server, but extremely loosely.
Right. I've got something back. I've got something at least. It's we'll see how long it lasts. 8.5 minutes left this race. Connor Wright still on pole. We're just going to try and stick this out for the last 8 minutes. God knows what's gone on here.
Yeah, I still seem to have some sort of half-decent connection to some cars, so I can try to at least keep us vaguely updated and posted on their positions. Oliar's still putting a lot of pressure onto Rozier, but
are you seeing visual issues as well
just
then?
yet?
John, sorry, I just...
we were interested in seeing what he would do, and he's made some inroads to correct us, but so I think the connection between us has also started to.
Yeah, I think there's also a bit of an issue going on.
As well, so I didn't quite catch that, Tim.
No, don't worry. It was more, I was just asking if you were having visual issues the same as me. Although it's just sort of come back to life and I can see what's going on again. I'm on board with Bukovkin at the moment, who is battling it out with Yonkers up behind him. Oh, and now it's all going wonky again. I got a couple of seconds of good-looking footage, but everyone's doing this very strange drifting on my screen. Not.
Yeah, for some reason I've got a decent connection to some cars. Mark Toll is still playing pinball.
Yeah, Mark Toll for me is just bouncing around.
Yonkers putting a lot of pressure onto Makovkin, but hasn't quite been able to make a move just yet.
No, I think this is almost going to be a bit more of a radio play towards the end of this, I'm afraid.
I think there also seems to be quite a big communication delay.
Yeah, I think I'm very tempted to just go over to the pre-screen, and we'll have to just sort of talk through what's happening, because I can only go off timing screens, as it's even when I just look straight at the game, it's not looking great. Yeah, I've still got access. It's coming up. I think it's.
Yeah, I've got at least a decent view of the battle between Tommy Rozier and Oliars, as well as that battle between Makovkin and Yonkers. So we should at least be able to stay towards turn 2. Looks like it's got a bit of a nose on the inside. Got to be very careful not to run too deep. We've seen Yannick make mistakes at Donington. He just about kept that one within the realms of reason. Gozin, though, does look like he's finally made the move past Ruoff. So that has been one that's been coming for a very, very long time. So that's one of our 3 battles that's been raging on. Rozier still holding on nicely to that P4 spot. Still under a lot of pressure from Oliars, as is Makovkin from the likes of Yonkers. So I think, based on where Connor Wright is, that there should be 2 more laps of this race left. I don't think we'll get a third. So, although we could do. So there's, I think we've got. It'll be quite close with the clock, as Rozier and Oliars actually going side by side through turn 1. Oliars looking to go around the outside. Rozier then covering that off on the inside towards turn 2. Oliars now diving back towards the inside. Rozier gives him just a little bit of space on the entry to the corner, but nothing that he can do through the middle of it. So Oliars is the closest he's been to making a move stick for a long time, but still unable to get past that other McLaren. Definitely the faster of the pair, but just not able to put anything together. Also got Makovkin and Yonkers battling. So keep an eye on that one as well.
I think I've managed to get it to come back just for a little bit. We'll try our luck again. I've got disconnected from the server again, so yeah, it's kicking me out left and right at the moment, but we're back. Who are we watching, John? I do apologise, audio-wise, couldn't hear a lot of what was going on then, just due to the fact that I was busily trying to just desperately get something up on the screen.
Sure. I'm trying with Tommy Rozier and Oliars. They got the closest that they've been for a while. Oliars almost made a move stick down towards turn 1 and 2, but Rozier did manage to hold on to it. That battle still going on. I think we will have 2 more laps left based on the clock. Yeah, Rozier really struggling, it seems, at the tail end of this stint, which is a bit of a surprise. And we've also got Makovkin and Yonkers that are battling fairly hard as well. Goslin did get past Ruoff in the end. I don't think we would have seen that. Yeah, Makovkin under all sorts of pressure from Yonkers, but just isn't never really able to actually come alongside. I think the person who's got the greatest chance of making a move in these final stages is probably Oliars, because it does look like those that train of Makovkin, Yonkers, and Steinhauser is pretty much maintaining order, whereas Oliars has managed to get alongside a couple of times. So we'll see how that plays out. Do we still have viewership?
Matt York's paced. Sorry, just got to quickly say, Matt York really catching up with the back of him. Matt York.
Oh yeah.
He's really close to him with the back of Caracas. As they sadly, due to the server disconnects, currently my normal broadcasting tool has thrown a bit of a wobbly and kicked me out of that as well. So doing it old school and manual now with the old shift left and right, I'm afraid. Luckily, there's only 15 cars left on the circuit. It's been a bit of a stinker, this one, hasn't it, really? Let's be honest, John, with disconnects and whatever problems gone on at this end as well, which I kept getting kicked out of the server. I think at one point it said server ping was over 14,000, so that would possibly explain why we've had some problems.
Yeah, it's a shame because we had such fantastic racing at a variety of points, but yeah, Matt York has managed to close up quite nicely on the back of Caracas. I don't know if he's going to run out of time. Oliars has dropped back a little bit to Brazil. This will be the final lap of the race, yeah, we've lost a total of 9 cars during this race, and yeah, very unfortunate on the stability side of things. It looks like Marlon's connection is the worst of everybody remaining after Mark Toll seems stabilised, but Marlon does seem to be holding on for the time being, and Caracas under huge amounts of pressure from Matt York. Matt York trying desperately to get past that McLaren. It's going to be so difficult to do anything through the next sector. Jonker's having the same problem with Makovkin ahead of him, but rounding the final corner though, we won't see it on screen, but Conor Wright is going to take what in the end was a dominant victory to take his maiden win of the season. See a win that we kind of thought was coming eventually. It looked like he would have it at Donington, but just never quite came his way. Mark Toll
Mark Toll didn't disconnect in the end. Actually, I'm just managing to follow the guys across the line as they go. So Brazil managing to hold it to 4th. I say I do apologise. Obviously, the last time I looked, Toll wasn't even available for me to look at. So good to see that he made it. Brazil 4th, Oliars 5th.
So Makovkin's going to hold on to P6 as well, though I think that there's going to be a very severe penalty awaiting him at the next race. So
I mean, contact didn't look that big from where we were sat, but obviously significantly more. Matt York doesn't manage to get past Caracas and ends up coming home in 10th. Yaraboski 11th. Terminen in 12th. Let's follow Climbs across the line. Oh, where is Climbs? There he is. There's Climbs coming across the line in 13th. Oh, and here comes the server issues again, having a wobbly. Gosling now coming across the line. And there we go. And Roof also finishing, coming across there. So not the race we were hoping for after the break, and not what we wanted to really see happen on the first of our 90-minute races. We will see if anyone wants to jump in a post-race interview. I imagine there's probably going to be some slightly disappointed lads though, so they might not be joining us quite so readily as they normally would, but we will hang on just in case they're up for it. Let's go back to the pre-screen, make sure the music's off. It is indeed. And I will just do my fiddling around with my screens and waiting to see if anyone comes on for a quick chat with us. Thoughts overall on that race, John? Obviously, apart from the stability issues that we faced sort of, through different points of the race, obviously with a lot of disconnects and a couple of guys, you know, obviously just ended up leaving the server. Well, actually quite a few guys ended up leaving the server.